Hey there, this is Justin with Ujoint Offroad Colorado. In case you're unfamiliar with us, what we offer is four-wheel drive conversions and off-road upfitting for the 4th generation Ford E-Series. So that covers any Ford van-based vehicles built from 1992 until current. We are based right here in Montrose, Colorado, right at the edge of the desert in the San Juan Mountains. Beautiful fall day to show you guys a very special project we got to be part of. So what we are looking at here is the future foundation of the Nomad RV's Euphoria, purpose-built Class C for off-roading. So we're very honored to be a part of this project. This is a very big deal for us to take on. This is the biggest undertaking that we've taken on yet at the Colorado shop. But I think we knocked it out of the park for these guys, and I can't wait to share it with you. So let's dive in. All right, so how we receive these from Nomad is just what's called a bare cutaway chassis. So it's just the stump of the cab there with plastic taped to the back. All stock, two-wheel drive. This is a brand new 2025 chassis. It is equipped with the 7.3 Godzilla gasoline engine. Just a fantastic engine. We've had nothing but good luck with them. That's linked up to a 6R140 transmission. Also a very good transmission that we've seen absolutely zero problems with. So very reliable powertrain right off the bat, and just a very simple vehicle to start with, which is key if you're going to be traveling remote. But they have never come from the factory with four-wheel drive. That's the only thing they're missing. So that's where we come in. So first thing we did on this chassis was added our standard 6-inch leaf spring four-wheel drive conversion kit. You can see all the bracketry we add for the conversion there. We do a full cleanup and repaint of the frame because they come pretty poorly finished from Ford. Every single rig does have custom-built leaf springs that are made right here in Grand Junction, Colorado by Alcan Spring. This makes a huge difference in the way that these ride, and is a huge reason why we choose to use leaf springs as opposed to coil springs on these, which I'll get into more later. But it allows each set of springs to be completely customizable for that rig, which you can't easily get with coil springs. So it allows us to fine-tune the ride on each one to get it to work exactly how we want. Another part of that is our custom-built Radflow 2.5 adjustable shocks. These are compression-only adjusters. They do have 24 clicks of adjustment, but you can see they have a dust boot on them, and they're all set up for a lifetime of hard use. These are serviceable as well, so if anything ever goes wrong with them, you don't have to throw them away. You just send them back in and get them rebuilt. The next thing that we add is our scratch-built Ujoint Offroad front Dana 60 axle. So this axle is loosely based around the geometry of a 2003-2004 F350. We do that for a lot of reasons, but it makes serviceability easier in the future. So the gear set and the bearings and seals and everything inside of this axle are all just for a 2003-2004 F350. So very easy to get service parts in the field. Which is a key thing for us here. We always are thinking about what it's going to take to own these things, further down the road. So all of the ball joints, all of the steering links, everything like that are all very common parts. Anything that's going to fail that'll leave you stranded are stuff you can just walk into any auto parts store in North and South America and get service parts for. So with the conversion, you get a thumb drive from us that has all the service part numbers for all of these different ends on all of the different steering components and ball joints. Everything from the knuckles out on this axle is from our good friends at Dynatrac. So we've got Dynatrac knuckles. What you also get with that as well is serviceable wheel bearings. So you don't have the typical throwaway unit bearings that come on this axle generally. So we do have serviceable tapered roller bearings in there. The setup is designed to run a 14.5-inch brake rotor from an F550. So that bolts right on. And then we actually reuse the stock brake caliper from this vehicle, so it makes getting brake parts in the future very, very easy. As you can see, as part of the conversion as well, we also do a final checklist after we get several hundred test miles on everything. And as part of that final checklist, we do a torque paint on all critical fasteners underneath here, so you can get a quick visual inspection of anything that might have come loose on you on your last off-road adventure. All right, the next part of the conversion is the driveline work. So this 6R140 that comes in the 138-inch wheelbase chassis, it does have a slip yoke on the back of it. So what's required to get that transmission properly converted to four-wheel drive is a complete removal of the transmission. We do a full teardown on it and then convert it properly to four-wheel drive using all OEM Ford parts. And then that transmission is reinstalled and refilled with fresh fluid. That allows us to bolt a NP 1128 manual shift transfer case right up to the back of that transmission. We then have front and rear drive shafts custom built. Those are CVs off of the transfer case to get rid of any possible driveline vibrations. The nice part about this too is that every single one of these U-joints is a 1350 CV drive U-joint. So you only have to carry one spare U-joint with you, and it covers all the positions on the front and rear shafts. To make room for the front drive shaft there, you see we do a minor reroute of the exhaust. We do that all out of stainless, just in the front header pipe, and then we leave the catalytic converter in the factory position. Since this one is going to be a Class C motorhome, we do upgrade the sway bars. So this one has a heavy-duty Hellwig front sway bar with our direct mount sway bar links. And then in the rear, we are also running a Hellwig sway bar, running our custom direct mount links in the rear. We do this for more positive sway bar engagement, so you don't have any slop of the bushing before that sway bar starts working. Now in the rear, we do have custom built leaf springs made as well. We pretty much know exactly what this thing was going to weigh based on all of the CAD design and everything that's been done for the camper. So we had the springs custom spec'd for the actual weight. Now these are all arch. There's no block in there, which is key for getting a good ride. This one does have a need to see some intermittent towing use. So we have added our Ujoint Offroad rear airbag kit with a disconnect lower cup there. So that allows for full suspension travel and droop while you're off-road with these airbags. We also add a set of our Alcan HD rear shackles as well. These are a very common fail point when you start using these vans off-road. They like to just snap in half. All right, so let's talk gear and axle ratios for a moment. So in our scratch-built front housing, we do have a Detroit TrueTrack limited slip in there. And then for this one, since it's got 35-inch tires, we did install 456 gears in the front axles. It does also have chromoly inner and outer axle shafts in the front. On the rear axle, these cutaway chassis in a 350 are equipped with what's called a Dana 70U full float rear axle. So this is a great axle. It's very heavy duty, but unfortunately the 350s generally are going to come with a 410 gear ratio in the back and an open differential. So 410 is not quite enough for the larger tires we're installing, and we're going to want some sort of a traction aid in there at the same time. So we did a full rebuild on it, re-geared to 456. And we got it set up with a Auburn E-locker while we had it all apart. These Dana 70Us, they are a 32 spline axle shaft from the factory. So we convert them to 35 spline with a chromoly axle shaft for an added level of strength in the back. Now for wheels and tires, our standard on most of our conversions that we do in-house is these Method 701s in flat black. These are a 17 by 9 inch wheel. And they are 8 on 170 bolt pattern, so super common, really easy to find. The reason why we like these methods so much is they have what's called a bead grip technology on them. So it's about, I'd say 90% as good holding power on the bead for the tire as a true bead lock without any of the drawbacks of owning bead locks. Mostly they are DOT legal. But there's a lot of cool stuff you can watch on these. Guys have done tests where they've just pulled the cores out of their valve stems and gone and driven them around and can't get a tire to be de-bead. So we've always been very impressed with these. I have them on my own vehicle. Love them a lot. When we mounted them, we transferred over all of the factory tire pressure monitoring, so that all still works as normal. And then we got it set up with a set of Apex valve rapid deflators. If you've never seen these before, you unscrew the cap, pull that up, and you're deflating. So super cool. It airs the tire down in no time at all, and they actually fill faster as well, which is really cool. And I'll show you our onboard air system here in a moment. So for tires, we went with a 35-12-50-17 Falcon Wild Peak HD. So these are a 125 load index. They got a lot of weight rating, which is really good. And of course we got them set up with a spare on the back there as well. All right, on the front end, we got him set up with our scratch-built FB004 all aluminum construction tube style front winch bumper. So we make these at our North Carolina shop, and I just love them to death. So we got this one loaded up with a 12K super winch. You can spec this out with a Warren as well if you'd like. That's running through our Agency 6 Ujoint Offroad synthetic line Fairlead out to a couple of Warren D-ring shackles. We got this thing all loaded up with Baja Designs lights. So we've got the amber and clear LP6s up top. Then in the middle here lit up, we've got our amber SAE, so that can actually be run on the highway, which is nice. And then we've got Squadron Pro, clear spot, and a amber combo beam as well. We do have this set up with a front receiver. This is really good for, you know, carrying bike racks, stuff like that on the front. Here's our front onboard air port, and then the Anderson plug, which allows you direct battery access. We do also add a blacked out Ford grille with the amber clearance lights in the grille, and then our favorite LED projector headlights, also all blacked out from our good buddy Scott at Vantage Optics. These are also DOT legal, so they have the cutoff on them so you're not blinding everybody. We do also add the Bushwhacker fender flare at the same time to make sure we've got adequate tire coverage, so you're all legal there. And then these things do gain quite a bit of height, so we add our Ujoint Offroad cab chassis side steps as well. Inside the cab, we add our four-wheel drive indicator light on the dash to let you know you've got positive engagement into four-wheel drive. And then we also run a dual needle and paddle valve setup from Airlift flushed into the dashboard to control your rear airbags individually side to side. So this has a lot of functions. I like to use it for load leveling, or almost kind of like a sway bar if I'm you know, in an area where I've got a lot of corners coming up. It'll help firm up the back end and give you a little bit better on-road performance. So here's our S-Pod in the dash. That's running all the off-road lights, the air compressor in the rear locker, just a simple switch there. And then down on the floor, you see our manual four-wheel drive shift lever. It does have our thumb screw disconnect on it, so all you got to do is undo that thumb screw right there. You pull the whole top half of that shifter off, and then this seat can swivel around once this thing is converted to an RV. Now under hood, we've got our S-Pod control head. This is where all the electrical accessories run to and are controlled. So this is a solid state unit. We've got everything labeled there, so you know exactly what's on what circuit. If you ever have any issues, you just pop the cover off and all your access to everything is inside of here. The factory fuse panel is right down below this. So all you'd have to do is just undo this screw here, and this whole thing comes up out of the way and you can get to the factory control head. Behind the grill, we add this bus bar assembly to make sure that we don't have a bunch of stuff ganged up on the battery. So that's one thing that drives me crazy on off-road builds all the time, is there's just 1,000 wires spaghettied onto the top of the battery. So we mitigate that by just adding 2 cables running down to our bus bar, and then off of that we grab our power for everything that we need. This one did get our onboard air system as well, so you can see the ARB twin piston compressor mounted on our bracket right there, right above the rear axle. That's feeding into a 2.5 gallon air tank that's mounted right over here. And then that air tank feeds the airbags. It will feed eventually ports, just quick connect ports. It'll be in front of the either fender in the back once it gets its RV body on it. And then I showed you the port in the front, which serves both front tires. So that's for a lot of different purposes. Airing your tires up and down is a big deal when you're using these things off-road. You're definitely going to want to air your tires down just for added comfort mostly, and then it just makes it a lot easier to air back up. But having the tank is nice because then you also have 2.5 gallons of pressurized air as well, so you can, you know, blow the dirt off your mountain bikes. I like to use it for cleaning, you know, like especially in the side steps of your camper when you're out in the desert. You're always tracking in dirt and sand and everything. Instead of carrying a vacuum with you, you just blow all that stuff out the side door. It makes it really easy. All right, now it's time to talk about the subframe. This was the biggest hurdle on this whole project. When Nomad first came to us, we knew just because of our experience with this chassis that the first thing they were going to have to deal with if they wanted to have a successful product here was to mitigate the chassis flex somehow. So in case you didn't know, these E-Series frames are incredibly flexible, like one of the most flexible frames maybe ever. Way, way, way more than any other truck on the market that people are currently doing builds like this on. So we knew we had to do something about it, and nobody else besides our good friends Kevin and Cam at Path Not Taken had ever really tried anything like this before. So we brought those guys on to consult with us. They were hugely helpful, sharing all of the things that they learned through their subframe and habitat build. So if you guys have not seen what they're up to, I'll link their channel in the description down below, and definitely go watch what they're doing. But we worked with Kevin and Cam to basically learn everything and all the mistakes they made through their whole build and apply that here. So I also want to take a moment to shout out my metal shop manager, David Carter. He just took this project and ran and just absolutely knocked it out of the park. I could not have done it without him either. He's just got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours into this thing. And hopefully we get the opportunity to make a bunch more. So let's run down everything. So this whole thing is constructed out of steel. Kevin made his out of aluminum. There was a lot of factors that go into why we chose to go with steel, but for the most part it has to do with just how much strength we get out of steel versus aluminum of a similar size. We were concerned about all of the welding that would have to go into the aluminum and how that was going to affect the metallurgy of the aluminum. So in the end, we just decided to go with steel. Now, this whole thing is constructed out of 2x3 120 wall, and all of the tabs and bracketry and body mount provisions are all made out of 3/16 plate. And we cut all that stuff in-house on our own CNC plasma table. Instead of going with a 3-point or a 4-point pivot type of setup on this, what we learned with Kevin was that these frames really want to be able to move in a lot of different directions, not just on an axis pivot, and especially with a big heavy box on this. We decided to go with a body mounted setup, and eventually on these lower positions here down below the frame. On Kevin's build, he went with a die spring type of disconnect to basically allow, you know, several inches of travel at every one of these positions for, you know, think about it like the factory Ford frame falling away from the subframe in an off-road flex type of movement. But the problem with die springs is that they get into what's called coil bind. They can only compress so much and then they can't compress anymore. And that's also a very common fail point on people that use that type of mounting system on a Expo style box build like this. is that those die springs, they hit coil bind too many times in a row and then they just wind up shattering. So what we came up with is we're actually working with a company called Perry Parts that does 3D printed bump stops, and he's going to make us a lower mount that will allow for several inches of disconnect at every single one of these positions, but it's going to be a lot more than what's available, what would be available in a die spring type of situation, because we can get a lot more compression out of the same amount of real estate below that frame there. So every one of these will be able to have the forward frame will be able to fall away 3 to 4 inches away from the subframe. So that'll help us keep tires on the ground. And then also the most important part of all of this is keeping that flex out of the composite box that's going to be on here. So any flex or torsion in that composite box is just going to destroy it. So we had to do everything we could to mitigate that. So that's why we went at it this way. So in the rear here, you can see where the factory forward frame stops right here. We knew their box was going to run a little bit long, so we knew we were going to need to make them a real beefy frame extension. So we fabricated that all out of steel. The 1/2-inch supports, the supports that attach it to the frame right here are built out of 1/2-inch steel, and then the frame construction is all out of the same 120 wall 2x3. We do have a receiver hitch here as well for them. And then to the rear, we added actually our production van rear bumper with a custom skin on it. So this has been scaled to the width of the Nomad box. And then we do have a nice strong steel serviceable bumper. So it's nice if anything does ever happen to this bumper, it can just be unbolted and a new one can be put on. We do have dual swing outs, spare tire on one side, and then on the other side we have just a general swing arm with a molly grid on it that Nomad will be able to add whatever sort of storage box to the back of it that they'd like. So to be fully legal, we had to get them set up with some taillights also. So we've got these custom built plates that we made to house these really cool LED taillights. And then we've got a S2 Sport diffused flush mounted in there for a reverse light. And of course we've got a license plate light as well to make sure that we're all legal. All right, in the back, we knew we needed some sort of a fender in the back of it. That's one thing that drives me crazy about a lot of Class Cs is they don't have a real good inner fender liner in the back. So the body winds up taking a beating when you use it off-road. There's going to be a lot of components underneath this subframe front and back, so we want to protect those from rocks and mud and everything. So we came up with this idea to actually use the rear fenders for like the drive axle of a semi-truck. So they worked out just perfect. They got a perfect radius arch on them for the tires that we're going to be using on this. Nice part about them is they are serviceable as well. So if anything does ever happen to this, it gets broken or whatever, it's just cheap and very easy to get a good replacement. So we made up these custom bar mounts to go over to the frame. And then those are the provisions to mount from buyers. And these things are stout. They're not going anywhere. You can stand on those things. So eventually this will have a mud flap hanging off the back of it as well. And then we're going to have a provision for a mud flap in the front too. So after we got all the engineering of the subframe figured out, and we did quite a bit of testing and R&D to make sure it was going to work, we needed to add in some mounting provisions so Nomad could affix their box to the back of this. So you see all these running down the outside of the rail here. This is how the box will be affixed to the subframe eventually. But I do believe the floor is going to be glued down as well as bolted. So that meant that this subframe was going to be totally non-serviceable in the future. So we needed to think about longevity. And one thing that's always on the top of my mind is corrosion and rust. So that is the advantage of going with aluminum. But what we decided to do on this one is we engineered it in such a way where we have flow channels into each one of these closed pieces of tube. And we actually had the whole thing hot zinc dipped. And then we closed up all of the holes in the subframe. So it's all zinc coated inside. And then we went back through and we did a epoxy primer on the entire subframe, and then we went back through and powder coated it as well. So this should have a nice long service life with no opportunities for corrosion. All right, so that's all I've got to share with you on this one. This thing is getting on a transport truck and headed off to New Jersey to Nomad to get the box fitted to it as we speak. So if you're interested in one for yourself, reach out to Nomad RVs. I'll link to their website below. They should have info coming out on this pretty soon. We're very excited about these. Hopefully this is ushering in a new era for us here at Ujoint Offroad. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. You can leave a comment down below. Best way to get me is by email. That's Justin, Justin, at ujointoffroad.com. If you're inquiring about a build at the North Carolina shop or a DIY kit, please email Chris at ujointoffroad.com. Thank you.